What's up, brother? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Very Aloha Friday.
Very Aloha Friday for you. I like that. That kind of goes into, we're recording on a Friday. This is going to come out, I think, on Memorial Day. So what an appropriate opportunity and conversation. After our last discussion about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and your experience with it, I finally got that right. There's so many, abbreviations. It's interesting. After our conversation with that, of course, I became more in tune to it and see it in different places. I'll do an upcoming podcast on this purpose summit I went to last week and saw a lot of ways that's going well for some companies and a lot of ways that it's not. But the cool thing I heard about that was we're still trying to figure it out, and there's a lot of opportunity for innovation. So hopefully that does something for you. But that's in the future. Today, since we're coming out on Memorial Day, and I have a honorable and decorated retired sailor. I figured we talk about the military service, what it meant to you, what it means now to be retired. How do you feel about that?
Retirement is definitely different. 25 years. So I joined in July 29th of 1996. I was 20. Went away to boot camp in Chicago and then started the greatest adventure I could have ever imagined for my life. Traveled the world, and retirement is different. I don't miss the military, so to speak, right? There's good and bad, positive and negative to everything you do, but I miss that camaraderie, the brother and sisterhood, waking up every day and there's, 18,000 like-minded individuals that have been through the same experiences that you can walk up to, and you share this great common bond. And it's just not here in this.
That's amazing. I never thought of it that way, but 18,000 like-minded individuals that have been through the same experience. That has to be such an intense brotherhood, such intense connection. That must have been truly special.
It was. And the great thing about that, you talk about, you mentioned diversity, DEI, and and that was just my base in Japan. I mean, every place I went there was different, more or less people, but they all came from all around the world, right? Literally around the world, people from the Philippines, people from all over the place that had come here and joined the military. And so getting to talk to them and experience their culture and have conversations with them. And I think, we talked to sailors about stress, mental health, and this and that. And they, some of the classes we went through, and I was always a speaker after that where I would talk about DEI, and the lecturer, the facilitator would always say, hey, Chief Paul, what do you do to de-stress? And I was like, I talk to sailors, the greatest humans on the planet. So
You're giving away my secret there, brother, because that's that's my job every day, and it's an honor and a pleasure to get to talk to you. People like you and people in my office, people around the country and around the world about how to have a healthier, more meaningful life. But let's go back, man. Like July 29th, 1996. Right now we're facing an interesting time in our workforce, and many young people might be considering the military for a variety of reasons. What was it for you? Why the military? Why the Navy in 1996 for you?
Well, we were roommates in college, and college was not a successful endeavor for me. Mainly, for the simple reasons that I didn't really understand my ADHD at that time. If I really go back and do self-reflection and whatnot, because I'm much better at now. I'm about to finish my bachelor's degree, and I've proven myself over and over and over again that I can go to college and I can learn. But at that time, I was literally at the whim of what that mental illness or disorder or whatever you want to call it. I was at its mercy. Me, I was very impulsive. I didn't want to wake up. If somebody was like, let's go do this, I would do it. And going to class wasn't always my goal. Actually, it wasn't my goal very often at all.
Right.
So
I guess I owe you an apology. If I would have had, about a decade's more experience at that point, maybe I could have caught the ADHD. But between me and the rest of our friends there at that time, I mean, here you are in cowboy boots and overalls riding on a skateboard. I mean, that picture alone should have alerted somebody like, hey, this guy, we need to get him checked out or something to focus on class because this might be a
yes,
problem.
but I was very, I mean, I learned so much. So I don't regret my time at Ball
Hmm.
State at all. I
Hmm.
learned about myself a lot, about human interaction, but I knew that I wasn't getting any better. I mean, I think that was probably the best thing that happened to me is at that point in life, at 20 years old, I knew I wasn't going to change,
Yeah.
not on
And
my own.
and I mean, I want to pull that out because I know I talk to so many parents and young adults that face that issue. I don't even want to call it a failure, but let's call it a failure, right? You give it a try, you go do college or community college, and you realize, man, I don't like this. It's not for me. We don't agree together. That's okay, right? And I think you're a great example of that. I want people to hear that today, that that's kind of what life is about, is trying things, and if they don't work, admitting failure and embracing it, right? Failure is all right when you learn from it. Too often we have this fear of failure that prevents us from trying new things. It's like, no, no, go give it a try, and if it doesn't work, regroup, recalibrate, and move on.
Yeah, I never viewed it as a failure, but it was like it was an epic failure. But because I learned that, when I got two older boys, right? I got one who's 23 and another one who's 20, and then a 13-year-old. And I always told them, like, go fail, go out into the world and fail, come right back. This is your base, your safe haven. We'll regroup, figure out what went wrong, and go back out. So because I think I did fail at things and I did learn from them, I've instilled in my kids that it's okay to fail, almost too much, because they're willing to try anything, and I'm like, "Are you sure?" And they're like, "Let's do it." Military kids, you gotta love them.
Absolutely. So 96, you realize you and university life don't necessarily agree with each other. Why the Navy?
Well, I tried out all the branches. Um, at that time, I don't know if you remember the Marine recruiter that came over to the fraternity house and talked to all of us, and he was really excited about being a Marine. Um,
I do.
a
We
little too
actually had a
excited
few
for me.
ex-Marines go through that house, if I remember right.
We did, and they were excited to see him too.
Yeah.
Um, but that was just a little too intense for me. My brother was already in the army and very successful.
Mm.
Um, he was a counterintelligence specialist. Um, was doing about as well as you can do in a military branch. So there was no way I was going to live in a comparison with him for the rest of my life. As
Interesting.
much as I loved him, there was no way I was going to be able to compete with that, and didn't want to try. I wanted to do my own thing. I interviewed with the Air Force, and I just didn't feel it. Right, the Air Force just wasn't for me. They're a great branch. They're very relaxed, right? Which, looking back at it now, it wouldn't have been good for me, but they treat their people very well. And so
Why would that have not been good for you?
I needed discipline, in all honesty, right? I wasn't waking up on my own to go to class. I wasn't doing the stuff I needed to. So I needed some structure in my life. Is really why I knew I needed to go to the military. I knew what I needed to move past what I already was, which was an incomplete human who wasn't finishing things, who wasn't able to do the necessary adulting to make it through life. Right? I could hold a job, I could do the bare minimum, but I didn't have the core building blocks that I believed I needed to be truly successful. So I knew the military would give me stability, structure, discipline, and I got to travel out of Indiana. So there was no bad hits to that whole uh, scenario for me.
A couple really important points there, right? First of all, you did the self-assessment and gained some personal insight into, hey, this is what I need, and this is where I might be able to find it. But I love this idea that you checked out all four branches to find out what was going to be a good fit for you. So good for you. At 20 years old, apparently maybe you had a little bit more depth or insight than some were giving you credit for back then.
Maybe I just knew I knew for me what I needed. And my parents at that moment in time were not real supportive. They believed that I wasn't disciplined enough to join the military. And so I knew what I could do. You know, I believed in myself. And plus, I had watched Top Gun when I was like 8 years old. So I was ready. And
Ironic
I was
that
going to go.
you started with Top Gun, and now we have a new Top Gun coming out. So or maybe already out.
So excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know my family is too. We love us some airplanes and Navy. So, all right. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to tell us the full 25 years. We don't have time for that today, but how was it, man?
Well, doing anything for 25 years, there's going to be good and bad. And there was some great highs and some really low lows. 2008 in particular, um, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're deploying in any branch of the military, deployments are hard.
Mhm.
It's isolation, you're cut off from the family. I truly believe, and this is in the core of my heart, that the strongest people in the world are military spouses.
I agree.
We go away, they work, you know, jobs, they take care of kids, they do all the bills. And I was fortunate enough that I had a great one. My wife was prior Navy, and she was really supportive. But deployments are hard. In 2008 was this perfect storm of issues that really sent me into a downward spiral mentally and emotionally. I had very poor leadership at that time. My wife was pregnant, and I was out on a 8-month cruise, so she got pregnant literally weeks before we went out. We found out halfway through. So
Mm.
you mix horrible leadership, literally 16-hour days. I mean, a 16-hour day was a good day. Losing and gaining 10 pounds a day, being on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. We were in the Persian Gulf, and in the Navy, if you're out to sea for so many days, you have a beer day, right? Where they shut everything down. You have a couple beers and you have a picnic, essentially a barbecue on the ship as a morale booster, because 70 straight days of 16 on, 8 off will kill you. I mean, it just does. And so you add all these things together, and I ended up forming basically anorexia. I was taking about 500-600 calories a day with this mindset that I needed to lose weight since I'm out here. I was drinking energy drinks to stay up. The stress of, the best advice I was ever told about working on the top of an aircraft carrier is, if you don't go up there thinking that you can die, don't go up. So it was every day we were on the actual flat top for about 14 hours a day, and then another 4 hours below doing maintenance. So for 14 hours, you have to be completely on your game.
Remind me what you were doing in '08 on the top of that aircraft carrier. Because if I remember right, you were on the USS George Washington, correct?
Abraham Lincoln in 2000.
Ah, the Lincoln. That's right. Sorry.
The Lincoln. I was with a great squadron, VFA-2. We had an amazing commanding officer who was a war hero from Iraq. Just a great human. He was not the leadership. It was my direct leadership. And
what was your
ordnance on F-18?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was loading ordnance on F-18s. So bombs, missiles, the 20 millimeter. I was loading all that on jets that were going over into Iraq and Afghanistan, and were, doing what they had to do to protect ironically, my brother was in Afghanistan at that time. So one of the reasons I think I took that deployment so seriously, we were communicating back and forth, literally, about 1,000 miles away from each other. So every time I loaded a jet to go off the ship, my mindset was that they were gonna save my brother's life. So there was just all these contributing factors that drove me into this downward spiral. I lost 17 pounds of muscle in 8 months. So much so that I ended up going to medical, the infirmary there on the ship, and they almost flew me off for a heart attack. It was just,
my goodness. You what, a 32-year-old young man. And
Yeah, I was young.
yeah,
Yeah, I was young.
wow.
Yep.
Um, do you think that's changed in the Navy or in the military at all? Has it become a more DEI accepting, understanding, easier workout? I mean, 16-hour days for 70 days in a row. Like, wow, nobody can take that.
No, that hasn't changed.
Wow. Okay.
That it can't change. That's the nature of what we do, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think some things that they're improving on is they're understanding mental health more in the Navy. They're getting more professionals in.
Hmm.
They're embracing it more, but that's the thing about the militaries. There's a fine line between what they can accept and what they can't. And our job is to protect everybody. We're not
Yeah.
just protecting Americans, we protect the world. Like if you think about what we do, especially in the Navy, not take anything away from any other branch, but we travel those seas to promote free trade and freedom around the world. So our base is the oceans, and we push our sailors, right? We always have.
Hmm.
Um, and there's just some that are good at it and some that aren't.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, '08 was the year I came out and visited and got a ride on your boat from Hawaii back to San Diego. Was that the right year?
Yes, you were
Yeah.
at the tail end of that downward spiral. I had
I
changed work centers.
mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I just remember. So first of all, '96. I mean, we were pretty close that last year where you were learning that college didn't agree with you, and then you take off for the Navy, and of course we lose touch. That was before everybody had handy dandy cell phones. I mean, I think eventually because I was working through college, I had a cell phone that weighed as much as my car does now. But we still could barely use them. You were training, so we lose touch. And I'll never forget getting that call sometime in, I don't know, January of '08. Hey, what are you doing? Not much, Joe. Good to hear from you, buddy. How you been? Hey, you want to come take a ride on my boat? Like, what do you mean take a ride on your boat? And sure enough, one of the greatest opportunities in my life that I still appreciate was flying out to Hawaii. And I remember seeing you for the first time, like, wow, you're not looking healthy. And that was my introduction to energy drinks. You and the gentleman you were associating with at that time, uh, first of all, flying to Hawaii is terrible on the body from anywhere in the United States, going all over time. I get in at noon, I'm exhausted. And you guys like, here, try these energy drinks. I'm like, and that was the first and last time I've ever done that. So kids, stay away from the energy drinks. They're terrible for you.
Which is a
Uh,
staple for the
I know
Navy,
it.
at least. I mean,
I,
that's how we
I
keep going,
I
unfortunately.
know most branches. Well, okay, but let's go back in military history. There's always been the use of some kind of stimulant or chemical to keep soldiers, sailors, and airmen and women going. And if I remember right, some of the dark history. There's a lot of dark history of World War II. Um, but somewhere along the line, I do remember that the Germans were using some kind of methamphetamine just to stay awake in the foxholes. So at least you're using FDA sanctioned methamphetamine in your in your monster
Yes.
drinks. But um, yeah, so I mean, what an honor to go out there, float back on the Lincoln with you into San Diego, and to experience some of that. And I remember watching you guys in all your colored shirts buzz about the flight deck. By then it was a demonstration, right? I don't think you guys were truly doing the work you were doing in the Gulf as we floated back from Hawaii to San Diego, but it was a sight to behold. It was amazing to see what you and your peers did to keep things going.
Orchestrated chaos is the only way to describe it. Um, it was one of my proudest moments. I love uh, there's so much that I did in the Navy that I love, but I can remember I could reach my hand out and I could touch the wingtip of the F-18 before it was about to take off. Like that's how close we are. And then, also on that deployment, uh, a jet turned on us. Actually, literally, I think a week before the break kind of happened, and I moved out of my work center and things happened. But a jet, we're traveling through the ocean and the ship lists, port to starboard as it goes through the swells, and this plane was this jet was taxiing out, and we have what's called the bomb farm, and that's where we keep all the explosives. And he turned as um, the ship listed, right? And instead of putting on the brakes, he pushed on um, essentially the gas,
Mhm.
right? Um, and so that force hit all of us. And I went into the air and I grabbed what was essentially it's called a myrrh tree, um, which is unimportant, but anyway, um, it hit me so hard. And if you duck, you can get under it. And I turned and it hit. So I grabbed this tree and my legs were out like this.
Wow.
And it took, we wear float coats, right? Which is
Mhm.
basically a life preserver. The force was so strong that it ripped everything out,
Wow.
everything, my cranial left. I mean, everything. It just tore me up in the air. And then the plane captain told him to brake and he came off um, the thrust and I slammed to the ground and was just, I mean, visibly shaken. I was messed up. I mean, I could have went over, it could have killed me. We're, 7 stories up.
Wow.
Um, so I went down. I mean, there was just a lot that was happening that was really, and that's every day. I mean, this is the Navy. That's what we do.
Right, that's what you do. I mean, the way you talk about it so casually, most of us be like, "Yep, that's PTSD right there." So let's talk about like what got you through that. You're in this dark downward spiral, anorexic, almost thrown overboard. Obviously, some mental health issues going on. How did you get through that?
Well, soon after that, and when I say I had bad leadership, like they were trying to, the worst thing you can do to a Navy ordnanceman is called redline, right? Which is where you take their explosive jack and you redline it, which means they're no longer qualified. So my leadership was literally trying to find ways to redline me, to ruin my career. They were doing everything I could. So I had, and they told me, like, look, we're going to ruin you for, I don't know what it was, didn't have faith in me. I wasn't an F-18 guy. There's a lot of bullying in the military, in all
Hmm.
honesty, right?
Hmm.
People get in platforms and, that's the best or this is the best. And when you go into they're this tight knit family, there's this ostracizing bullying. It takes a time to get adjusted. And I didn't
Hmm.
adjust. I didn't adjust well to them.
Hmm.
So I got moved out of that work center and into quality assurance, which just being away from that environment where I felt like I had to defend myself every day as being attacked really helped. So I was able to move away from there and had some better leadership and was able to go to work every day, not at a 10, right?
Yeah.
So, with my senses, I was off the flight deck more. There was just a lot of changes just with moving work centers that enabled me to essentially be relaxed at work. So for 6 months, I'm on a 10, right? Between the flight deck, between the leadership, between everything, I'm just at this heightened state of stress all day, every day. And so just leaving that helped. But they wanted to put me on blood pressure medication, my blood pressure was completely messed up and my, heart arrhythmia that they hadn't yet discovered was going crazy. So come back from deployment in April,
Well, hold on,
obviously
before
noticing
before
some
come back from
changes.
deployment, before come back from I got to point that out because I think today in our workforce, what you described there back in '08, many people in the civilian world are facing today, minus the jet thrusters throwing you overboard. That level of stress and being at a 10 all the time, that state of hypervigilance and constant stress. And I think '08 in the civilian world and in the recession we experienced and the past 2 years of pandemic have really scared a lot of people into one like, will I have a job next week? And so, I mean, we're at a heightened state. It's not a military heightened state, but many people in the workforce are at a heightened state. And so that idea of, getting physical every once in a while and getting your heart checked out, it's sad and crazy to think that it took that for them to discover that problem you had. But then also, I mean, changing workstations. I mean, that's the thing that I heard is if you recognize you have bad leadership, or that bully mentality, you got to find a different situation or find some opportunity for change. Or if nothing else, I mean, talk to a professional about it, get some ideas, get some answers. I'll tell you again, last week was this great positive purpose summit conference where everybody's all cheery. You know, there were 200 companies represented there. And then I thought, wow, only 200 companies across the country, right? Enough to care about something like that. But we are seeing improvement. Hopefully we continue to see that in the workforce. I know in the next couple of weeks, I'm speaking on mental health to several groups, including construction contractors and people like that. But for you, it took changing workstations, a change of environment, and change of scenery. Did it help? Or how quickly did it help?
I want to say almost instantaneous.
Wow.
Because when you don't have to go to work and think this is going to end my career today, and it was simple. I mean, they were just, it was everything they could do. And it was so blatant that I had other leaders from other work centers coming to my defense. That's how bad it was. I mean, it was just this headhunting mission that they were on to discredit me, to try to ruin me. So getting out of that was instantaneously better. It took about a day or two before I realized I don't have to look over my shoulder every second. I don't have to be this way. But there was also, I mean, at the same time, I'm going through abandonment issues because these were my brothers and my sisters and my family, not so much the people that I worked for. I could care less about them, but the ones I worked beside. And here I was leaving them to go to a different position, which was good for my career and I loved it, but still, the one thing about, you know, F-18 AOs or AOs in general is we're a very tight-knit family. So there was abandonment issues, but things started to get better right away. I started eating healthier. Well, I had time to eat. I mean, when we were working on the flight deck, you know, this is a perfect, we don't have time to leave. So one of our people was working in the galley for his temporary duty. And he would bring up a bag, trash bag, essentially, full of leftovers from mid-rats, which is midnight rations. And we would eat out of this trash bag for like 10 minutes, grabbing chicken wings and mozzarella sticks and whatever we could scavenge into our bodies just to try to get enough energy to go up for the next, you know, 6-8 hours of our shift. So we weren't eating healthy. So I actually had a chance to go down and eat regular meals, you know, in the ship. And so there was a lot of things that changed that really helped out. And then, of course, seeing you in Hawaii helped kind of bring me back to normal. Got home to the family where, you know, April was at the end of her pregnancy. So I missed the whole pregnancy, but got to be with her. And she noticed right away that I wasn't the same person. And so we discussed it. I ended up getting counseling, going to counseling soon after, like within weeks, I think, of being home. I got it myself into counseling, and that really finished it off. And
I got to tell you, and it's almost bringing tears in my eyes now just thinking about it. One of the loveliest moments I've ever experienced in my life that wasn't with my own wife and family was when you got off that boat and saw your wife and gave her a hug, man. And I have a beautiful picture of it. Oh, that was such an important moment, such a beautiful moment in life. I mean, that was truly so much there. Yeah, and I'm glad I got to spend a little bit of time with the two of you, and then I headed out. And then where did life go? So you got some counseling, military counseling, I'm guessing, right? Because they had you know, you had people at the base you were at.
it was civilian. So
Really?
there's two different types of counseling they have on a base. So you have mental health,
Mm-hmm.
right, which is military, right? Military counselors, military trained doctors. And then you have like we call them in the Navy, we call it Fleet and Family Services. And they have counselors. And so I ended up going to a counselor, affectionately nicknamed Painkiller Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason the counseling actually came up is they were going to put me on like I told you, blood pressure medication. And I refused. And they're like, well, you have to figure out how to bring your blood pressure down and figure this out. And so I knew that the only way that was going to happen is if I got Zen, right? I had to get centered and I had to figure myself out. And so going to Painkiller Jane dealt with a multitude of issues, which actually very few of them were about the Navy and leadership. It was, you know, other issues growing up with an alcoholic mother, being adopted, my son who lives in Michigan with his mom. I mean, there was just a multitude of things that were
Right.
all contributing to this mental health breakdown. And I'll say it was a break,
Right.
right? That ended up happening. So greatest experience of my life.
Yeah. So, and Painkiller Jane, was nicknamed affectionately Painkiller Jane, not because she was giving you painkillers, but because she was ripping the Band-Aid off profusely, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah. I mean, she was very blunt, which you have to be with the military because
Right.
we're
Right.
not dumb and we will hide it and we have coping mechanisms. And
Uh,
she was able to get through all that, and get to the core. I'll never forget. So, backstory, so your viewers and listeners understand, went through a painful divorce and custody battle with my ex-wife in Michigan
mhm,
and lost,
mhm,
due to being very naive and having a poor lawyer, but lost my son completely.
mhm,
And I had not seen him since he was 5. So in 2008, he was 9, 10 years old. So I haven't seen him in 5 years. And dealing with that, being adopted, abandonment issues, which is
mhm,
reoccurring theme in all adoptive children.
mhm.
Um, she was like, she asked me, when was the last time you saw your son? And I was like, oh, at that time, I think it had been 6 years, 5, 6 years. And she's like, he's dead to you. And
Mhm.
I was like, no, no, he's not. And she's like, are you going to see him? Can you go see him? And I was like, well, I could. And she's like, well, what would be the repercussions of that? And went through this whole thing. And she's like, you really need to mourn.
Yeah.
And it was so painful to hear, but it was the truth. As much as I love my son,
Mhm.
um, with the way things were, there was no way he was going to be in my life.
Yeah.
And so I had to go through that mourning process. And once I did, and actually mourned him, man, life just got easier. And not to say I never wanted to see my son or anything like that, but I had to deal with the situation I was in.
I
And
think
his
that's just an
mother was not going
amazing
to make it easy.
example, right? Like listening to all the issues you were dealing with, and not I hope you don't take this disrespectfully, but you're not the only person dealing with that stuff. That we live in a broken world with people dealing with so many issues, much like that are wrecking their mental and emotional and physical and spiritual health. Like, I'm so happy you got the help you needed from somebody named Painkiller Jane. But man, what a great example. Like, I love hearing the fact that it wasn't about work, it wasn't about the Navy, it was about everything else going on. And once you took care of that, work life got a little bit better.
It did. And really after that, so when you deal with essentially the death of a child, which, not to take away from anybody who's actually lost a child, because I couldn't imagine, but
Right.
I still haven't seen my son, since he was 5, and he's 23 now. So I haven't seen him in 18 years. So, um, I'm glad I went through that then.
Yeah.
But when you deal with these things, and I start to look back on life, everything had a reason. And no matter what it is, there's always a reason that we don't see, that makes sense later, even when it feels like it's not going to make any sense at all. Why did I not ever see my son again? Well, who knows? His life is complete. Maybe he's good. Maybe he's this. There's some validation there for
Mhm.
some reason. Um, Going through that, if I wouldn't have discovered, the heart issues and the mental health issues, honestly, at that time in 2008, who knows what state I would be in. I was such an angry person.
Yeah.
So after that, I started to really just look at life like, okay, where's the meaning?
Mhm.
What's this really about? And
Mhm.
so, last time we talked, I talked about Paul Giddens,
Mhm.
who changed my life and asked me to thank people, and I became this positive, hey, life is all good, um, individual, and I've maintained that positivity ever since, in all honesty, and it changed my leadership. I became such an incredible leader because of that. Um, in my
Oh,
opinion, and honestly, in the opinion of a lot of people, because I just got a phone call the other day from one of the guys that used to work for me. So,
well, okay. So, like, I just want to warn everybody listening or watching. Like, we did not set this conversation up for you to walk into my logotherapy trap right here. But everything you just said, right, brother? This is the stuff I preach on the podcast weekly. In my office, like, I found meaning in adversity. I went and I got a mentor named Painkiller Jane. I can't let that go, right? I had a mentor, a therapist that helped me take that pain, take that hurt, take that suffering, and find meaning in it. And then, like, man, I'll never forget that transition, because you were an angry dude before '08, and then all of a sudden, like, connect in '09. I'm like, whoa, what's with the Zen master going on there, Buddha? And I mean, so different, so positive. So I mean, you for those of you listening, right, you can almost get thrown off a 7-story aircraft carrier into the ocean, bounce back, get help, turn mental health issues related to adoption, abandonment, mourning your son because he's alive but you can't see him, and you can turn that around and live a more meaningful life. Holy cow, this is like, you're a therapist, dream. Right, I just
It's
want to put a poster of you up in my office and be like, okay, don't be this guy 20 years ago, be this guy today.
yeah, and I'm nothing special by any means, and I've never thought of myself that way. I think I'm a good public speaker, and I've had a lot of people say, "Hey, man, like you changed this, you changed that," but I've never viewed myself as anything special
Okay, hold on a
because
second.
it's
I
just
know
an outlet.
this is going to go somewhere important, and I want to give you that, but recognize there are individuals listening to this podcast that knew you back in 95 and 96. And those guys saw you and they knew you thought you were something special.
Yeah, at that time, my ego barely fit into the house that we lived in. I'm sure,
So, but I mean,
but
what
there's a lot to.
and I bring that up not to reminisce too much, but to look at, like, hey, there's opportunity for growth and change. Don't be that guy you were at 19.
No, and a lot of it is humility. I had no
Yeah.
humility
Yeah.
at 19 years old, which most of 19 years old, 19-year-old kids don't. I listen to my son, my youngest one, 13, who's just an amazing human already. I'm so proud of all my kids, but this one really, for some reason, listens to me more than the others do. And
Well,
he's a
because he's
really good
13.
human.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, they didn't listen at 13 either. I
Yeah.
don't know. We messed this one up. But he's, humility is something he doesn't have yet, and
Mm.
he'll get it, right.
Mhm.
But he's also the world is a positive type thing. So, but where I was going with that is it's all about your outlook. I lived in a house with, 7 other people at one time, my brothers and sisters, and we all went through different experiences in the house, and they are just, some of them are very, very negative,
Mm.
right, about the whole experience, and my mom was an alcoholic, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat that,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean it was all bad. I mean, it's how you look at it, right? Was there still love? Was there still affection? Was she perfect? No, no more, no less than I am,
Mhm.
right? And it's literally how you look at the world around you for me, right? And I choose to not look at the world as if it's attacking me. I refuse to wake up every day and say, okay, I need to be on the defensive because the world is going to come at me and I've got to defend myself. Instead, I wake up and I say, what is the world going to offer me today?
Oh,
Right? What is going to be there for me today? And um, it, it's different, right? And not say every day is good or every day is bad, but I woke up and I breathe, right? And
mhm.
that's
Good.
that's a gift right there, because there's people that don't. One of the, not to drone off, but man, there's been so many amazing experiences in my life, but the worst and the best was my best friend died when I was 15, in a car wreck coming back to my house. Right, they had TP'd my house, which is awesome. Right, I lived in the country in Indiana, Roanoke, and 3 of my friends had TP'd my house, and they had left, and they were coming back to look at it, right? Because you can't TP a house and not admire your work. And the driver fell asleep, and they hit a tree.
Mm.
And my best friend at the time, my best friend in the world, died 3 days later of head injuries.
Mm.
Um, and I was horrified that he died, but I am so thankful every day that I lived through that, because he didn't get to join the Navy. He didn't get his driver's license. He didn't get married. He didn't lose his virginity. Like there's so much in life that he didn't do. So since that happened in retrospect, I wake up to do something that he can't. So I wake up every day because Christopher Corey Cook doesn't get to. And I've lived my life. I talk about him with my kids. Um, his life, for no other reason, gave mine immense meaning. To know that it is a, not a privilege because you don't have a choice, but it's a gift to wake up every day and be able to breathe and do something with the life that you have.
Well, and I want to go
That's
back.
my opinion.
I think that's the only part I'll argue with is you do have a choice every day, right? Yeah, you get up breathing, but you choose whether you want to, how you want to look at it and how you want to see it and what do you want to do with it. And again, that, I mean, that is everything I talk about and we talk about in my office, that you don't get to choose the conditions under which you live. Not all the time. Sometimes we can, but not always. But you can always choose how you face it, what your attitude is, how you're going to deal with it. And I think you're a beautiful example of that. I mean, so many things you've illustrated here, some terrible, difficult times. And I get to hear about other people that experience similar things in my office. But you are a living, breathing example of that idea that yeah, you wake up and you choose. I mean, my God, have you been reading Frankel or something? Am I you've been reading books behind my back or what? But I mean, it's like you're preaching what I preach, brother, right? Like, yes, no matter what, we don't get to choose the circumstances, but we choose how we embrace them and how we deal with them. We don't choose our adversity, we choose how we face it, and we choose whether or not we want to grow from it.
Yeah, if you're not going to learn anything from the struggle of life, then why go through it? And it's, I mean, everything has meaning. For instance, I got out of the Navy in September. So since September, it took some time off, but then been looking for work and, going back to college full time. So I was going, while I was in the military, taking a class here and there, but now I'm like 2, 3, 4 classes at a time, and they're 8-week online classes. So it's a struggle. And then, on the side doing DoorDash, and I've been applying for jobs and they haven't been working out. And it's very easy. And I'm fortunate that I have retirement pay and disability from the Navy, but me and my wife both went from great jobs to now we're in Texas, and neither one of us are working. We've both been trying to find our niche because when you retire overseas, you don't have a network, you don't have a way in, you don't have this group of people that can vouch for you. So that's been a struggle. But then, my son left everything he knew because we moved over to Japan when he was 3. So from 3 to 12. So for 9 years, all he knew was Japan. I mean, we came back to the States for a visit, but that was his home. And he faced some mental health issues while we're in Japan about moving, the stress and the anxiety of leaving his friends. Even though in the military people leave and his friends had left him, it was still this idea that he was going through that. So, he just finished his last day of school yesterday. And I told my wife last week, I said, maybe we're not working because we needed to be here for him every single day. And my son is thriving in school. Just tried out for and made advanced theater, and he'd never done theater before except for one play, Frozen. So he's killing the game, right? And a lot of that is his mentality, and he's a very positive person also. But if the reason I'm not working today is because I need to be here for him, then it's worth it. I can survive every day. And not everybody's that fortunate, and I also realize that.
What a beautiful example of finding meaning in adversity.
There's enough adversity,
Right.
you don't
Right.
you don't have to look for the adversity. It's
That's
just
such a good
finding out
point, man.
what is the reason behind the reason.
I
And
think
it's not to make us struggle. I don't believe that.
I can't end any better than that, right? What is the reason behind the reason? I love that idea. Yes, there is plenty of adversity out there today. What do you want to do with it? Do you want it to make you stronger? Joe, you're a great example of that, right? Make you better, make you stronger. Not stronger, more zen. Is that not what you said? It made you more peaceful.
Yeah, I'm very peaceful. Not to say I don't get upset or angry. I mean, that's not what it's about. But it's what's the center, what do I want to be known as? Right. And that's really after '08, and talking with Paul Giddens, I decided, what do I want to be known as? Do I want to be known as this angry tyrant who just doesn't care about people? Or do I want to be known as something different? And I made that switch, and I want to be known as literally one of the most positive people you'll ever meet. So even when I'm door dashing, I'm out there, I'm delivering food, and I walk into these businesses, and I try to be just ridiculously positive. And if I can get a smile out of somebody, then that's why I did that day, right? Is DoorDash my ideal dream job? No, it's not. But if I get to put a smile on another human's face, man, what an opportunity, what a gift. So that's my job right now, to make other humans smile.
I can't end any better than that, brother. That's an awesome way to do it. Last time you ended with, you want to make more good humans, and you're a good human making other humans smile. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you for giving us just a little bit of time today. I appreciate it, man.
It's been my honor. Thank you very much.
Hey, let's talk again soon. Love you, brother.
Love you too.